Hey, what's up, everybody? Mike Lindsley back with you. It is 9 minutes with me here on IGTV, YouTube, and Facebook. And make sure that you hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports and download and subscribe to my podcast. It's the ML Sports Platter via Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Can you believe it? Today is the 1-year anniversary of the ML Sports Platter. Thanks so much for following. Thank you so much for supporting. Make sure to keep downloading, to keep subscribing, to keep sharing. Leave some feedback. Tell your friends, and we'll continue to grow this thing into 2019 and beyond. This video here is brought to you by Brian Comboy of MassMutual New York State. Go with Brian today with tax-efficient retirement planning. Brian Comboy of MassMutual New York State. We are also supported by Timberbanks Golf Club, the Manor Bakehouse Cafe, and Welch & Company Jewelers. I want to get into the college football playoff as it sets up right now. We're in a week-to-week situation with all these games. Everybody wants to give the top four. Everybody wants to kind of, mix and match and see where resumes line up in Georgia versus Oklahoma and Oklahoma versus Ohio State and Ohio State versus Notre Dame and all the rest. I mean, there's 3 cinch teams that today are in. Period. End of discussion. There's no way they're going to get pulled out. Alabama is the best team in the country. I don't think I'm breaking news telling anybody that. And they struggled for a little bit yesterday against Auburn, but then they ended up pulling away. And you can just see how good Tua Tagovailoa is, with his unbelievable playmaking, his mastery of the offense. When you think about benching a senior in Jalen Hurts, who's played in the college football playoff, for a guy like Tua, it really shows you Nick Saban and his confidence in this guy. And I agree with Anish Shroff, who had the play-by-play gig last night down in Miami for the Panthers of Pittsburgh and Miami Hurricanes. And he said, look, Kyler Murray is really good, and he's an offensive explosion, but Tua completely changes the game for Alabama, just completely changes it. Plus, he's playing week in, week out against better defenses. But Alabama's the best team in the country. This is one of the great dynasties in sports history. I happen to think that this Nick Saban dynasty, the past, 10, 11 years it's been going on, is the greatest college football dynasty of all time. They're undefeated. They're going to play Georgia in the SEC title game. Now, that game, to me, is the wild card game. If Georgia nips Alabama in that game, I still think Alabama deserves to get in. If Georgia loses in any way, shape, or form to Alabama by 2 points or 30 points, I think Georgia's out. And remember, there's never been a 2-loss team to make the college football playoff. I think, though, that there's a real chance if Georgia nips Alabama that both of those teams still get in because of Alabama's resume compared to Ohio State, Oklahoma, and obviously a team that they just beat in Georgia. Georgia won't even be in the conversation. Georgia would be in the conversation, but again, you're looking at probably an apples to oranges situation and trying to compare the overall resume of Bama to anybody. So Bama to Georgia based off of the SEC game, based off of SEC resumes, and then against Oklahoma and Ohio State, I think both of them are absolutely positively not up to par with Alabama. I just don't think those resumes are as good. When you look at Georgia, by the way, this is a really, really good team. Can you believe the running backs that they've had in DeAndre Swift now and before that, Sony Michel? Obviously, and Nick Chubb with this football team. I mean, my God, running back you here the last few years with the Georgia Bulldogs. And you look at Jake Fromm, and he's been an unbelievable play-action quarterback this year for the Bulldogs. They have an intense defense, and they're well-coached with Kirby Smart, who used to work under Nick Saban. Georgia has the 16th best schedule in the country. So I think if they nip Alabama in that game, they're in the college football playoff, and then it also allows Alabama to stay in. So Alabama today is a cinch to get in. Clemson is also a cinch. They throttled South Carolina. They have an unbelievable resume. Just think about this, right? It was only weeks ago that Syracuse had Clemson on the ropes down in Death Valley. But since that time, Clemson's really shown how good they are. They've used a third-string quarterback against Syracuse. They did that after they lost, Kelly Bryant. They lost Trevor Lawrence, and then of course they went into Chase Bryce, and he ended up throwing the huge couple third downs, fourth down in terms of conversions. And then you look at the defense up front, and that defense with Clennon Farrell and company and Austin Bryant. I mean, that defense is so good on the ends and up the middle. They're one of the more complete teams in the country, and they can score with anybody. Clemson is absolutely in. They've played the schedule. They've beaten everybody. And then you take a peek at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is in, and I was back and forth with somebody on Twitter today as usual about how he said, I don't understand the Notre Dame schedule nonsense. Well, there's no nonsense to it. They beat Michigan. They beat Stanford. They beat a Northwestern team that is now ranked. They beat Pittsburgh that was ranked as of yesterday. They went through their entire schedule and beat everybody. And then the rivalry game against USC, you throw the record of your opponent out the window because you play them every year and they really, really know you. If you look at the and they beat Syracuse. If you look at the overall big picture of Notre Dame, they've beaten everybody on the schedule. They're undefeated now. I know they don't have a conference championship game, but does not matter. Notre Dame is undefeated. They deserve to be in the college football playoffs. So that's 3 teams right now. Who's my 4th? Well, it's between Georgia, Ohio State, and Oklahoma, and I would take Georgia as of right now. Again, I think when you line up resumes with Georgia against Ohio State and Oklahoma, you've got the 16th best schedule in the country in terms of Georgia. From a look test standpoint, they're a better, more balanced team as well. Offense, defense, special teams. Ohio State's defense leaves something to be desired, and Oklahoma basically plays little to no defense. So this is a situation where I think Georgia's resume and look test should get them in. I just think that they're a better team. I think that the overall resume is better. But what I will say is if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC title game, which everybody is predicting, that will open the door for one of the other 2 teams. I think they're going to be duking it out back and forth. If Oklahoma runs it against Texas and crushes in the Big 12, and Ohio State nips Northwestern, they may take Oklahoma, and you could flip the table and go the other way with it as well. I think, though, that if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC title game, and Oklahoma and Ohio State win by no matter of how many points, I think Oklahoma is actually going to get in to the college football playoffs simply based upon the fact that right now they're basically ranked higher. Now, Ohio State does have a major opportunity here to leapfrog, and you know what's amazing is going into that Michigan game yesterday, I picked Michigan to win that game with hesitation because we hadn't seen Ohio State's best football all year long until yesterday. Yesterday, they delivered. When they play like that, they can beat anybody in the country, maybe except Alabama. But they can beat pretty much anyone when Haskins is playing that way and they're getting defenses to bite and swing across the field. If you watch them against Michigan yesterday, it was amazing how ill-prepared Michigan was in this game. They were crossing patterns. That's it. This is Pop Warner stuff. This is Pop Warner passing with Ohio State across the middle. They were going right to left, playing the crossing route that way, and then once they swung the field, they swung it back, and Michigan under Don Brown, the defensive coordinator, who in my opinion is one of the best coordinators on either side of the football in the entire country, they were totally lost. But Ohio State can absolutely score with the best of them, and they're an opportunistic team as well via special teams and defense. They can get it done, and yesterday they played unbelievably well in dominating Michigan. Again, they gave up plenty of points to Michigan, but they scored 60+, so it really didn't matter at that point. So as of today, again, with still a championship weekend coming up and all the rest, I've got Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Georgia, but that SEC title game is going to dictate, in my opinion, who gets in as the 4th team. And again, if Georgia nips Alabama, I think Georgia and Bama both deserve to get in. If Alabama beats Georgia, then you're going to have basically a toss-up between Ohio State and Oklahoma. Thanks for watching 9 Minutes with me. I'm Mike Lindsley, IGTV, YouTube, and Facebook. You can hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports. Visit pinstripepassion.com for my Yankees and baseball commentary. This video is brought to you by the Phoenix Sports Restaurant, of course, Axe Exotic Pets, and the official title sponsor of the ML Sports Platter, which is Bryant and Stratton College, the official college as well. Make sure that you start your career today with Bryant and Stratton College. My podcast is on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. You can go download it, share it, leave some feedback as well. 1-year anniversary today of the ML Sports Platter. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing what's next. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.